Hello, everyone. Good morning. A very good early morning for me anyway. Thank you for attending. We're going to spend 30, probably 45 minutes talking about what's coming next with cnMatrix, our Ethernet switching portfolio here at Cambium Networks. So what is coming next is our program 3.0, and I want to tell you all about it, what it does for you and what it includes. Let's see here, technical difficulty, there we go. So these are the topics for today. All right, I'm back. So a quick overview of cnMatrix, a little bit about why cnMatrix, and this applies to our entire portfolio, our previous releases, as well as this new 3.0 release. For the 3.0 release, I'm going to talk about the details of when it's coming out. It does include new hardware. There are a lot of new accessories also tied to this release, and then also the new software, what kind of features, what kind of enhancements come in 3.0, and then I'll wrap it up with a quick summary. So jumping right into it, I want to talk about the hardware and software a little bit, kind of our internal strategy. This is a review for some of you. You've probably seen it before, so I'll try not to spend too much time on it. But anyway, our hardware. A lot of people ask me, is this an OEM switch? And it's not. It's not an OEM switch. Nothing wrong with the OEM model. If you define what you want to build, you can easily go to China, you can go to Taiwan or other places. You can give them your requirements and you can get something very close to what you want right off the shelf. They will fine tune the software for you so that it has your company name on it. So this is one way to provide a switch to the world. We did not go down that path. We wanted to design the software ourselves, and we wanted to design the hardware ourselves. So the hardware that we came up with is a silicon-based switching solution. So as packets come into our switch, some packets will just be switched through the switch without touching our processor, and that's because it can be handled by this silicon-based switching architecture. Some packets will be forwarded to our processor for being processed as controlled traffic, very low percentage of the overall traffic. But anyway, because of this architecture, because of this design, we have a dedicated hardware data plane that can handle all your L2 and L3 traffic at line rate. So these switches are a non-blocking switch. The silicon that we've chosen, very rich set of L2 and L3 functionality, extensive QoS capabilities, ACLs and filtering, and so on. Now this architecture, I do want to point out that we have chosen this architecture, we've chosen the silicon switching solution, and we are using it on every one of the Ethernet switches that we are building. The picture to the right is our 4 switches that we currently have today, plus the 4 new ones coming out later. I'll talk more about that. But anyway, important point here is we've selected a hardware architecture that we are using in every one of our switches. So it gives us a very robust and high quality solution. Okay, what else about the hardware? On every one of these units, you'll see a USB port, very useful for transferring files to and from the switches, very handy. Also, people use the USB port for charging their cell phones while they're in the wiring closet. So another side benefit there. We have an out-of-band network management port. So this is a true out-of-band network management port. This out-of-band port is not tied to the in-band ports. If your in-band network, if your main network goes down, you can't access the box for whatever reason, you can still access the box through this out-of-band port. So if some people leave a connection to the out-of-band port, in case something happens, they will still have access, can be remote access to these switches. So very useful. And also we have your very standard RJ45 console port as well. One last thing to note on the hardware, some of these SKUs, not all 8, some of these SKUs are fanless. In this picture, it's the top 3 SKUs that are fanless. So you open up the box, there's no fans inside. They're really quiet. I put it on my desk and I sometimes forget that it's even turned on. The bottom 5 SKUs, there are fans. It's usually because lots of PoE can be pulled through the box. It heats things up a little bit. So we do have a couple fans in those boxes. However, you know, we could have been fan this up to a certain amount of PoE. So we are going to add this as on the roadmap. We don't have this today. We're going to add a mode where you can put it into a low PoE mode. And as long as you stay below a certain amount of PoE, we will not turn on the fans. So that's coming next. Little pet project of mine. Okay, software strategy. So what do we do for the software? So a software for these switches, this is actually very, very important to me, and it's enabled our R&D team to be as effective and as efficient as we've been. We have one code base for every one of our switches. Now, these 8 switches here, this is our enterprise family of switches. We're also building, it's to be covered in another presentation, but we're also building some WISP or tower switches. We're also building a video surveillance and outdoor video surveillance family of switches as well. Anyway, all of these switches are going to use the same code base, and the same binary executable will be used for all the EX switches, the ones shown here, as well as the TX or our tower switches. So it's one binary file. You don't have to worry about which file to download if you want to upgrade the software. It's one file used for all boxes. Because it's the same code base, it has big advantages both for the user as well as us, the developers. You know, you get the exact same software functionality across all switches. You get the exact same use and feel. For each feature, the nuances of the features are exactly the same. It really helps us internally to improve the quality as well, because every one of these switches are deployed in different ways, but it's the same software that's getting exercised over and over and over again. So if a switch is deployed in some strange situation that uncovers a bug that we didn't find ourselves, well, when we find that bug, it gets fixed across all of our switches. So it really helps us with our quality and robustness. Okay, that was a quick overview on our hardware and software. Going a little bit deeper now. So why cnMatrix? Is this just yet another Ethernet switch out in the market? I don't think so. I think we stand above, and here's why. This Ethernet switch, you can definitely put it in the category of an enterprise grade layer 2 and layer 3 capable switch with full features. As I mentioned earlier, extensive ACLs, and filters and QoS, long list of security features. So fully featured switch, fully managed, right? You hear about switches out there that are partly not non-managed or smart managed. This is fully managed, and in the enterprise space, this is what you want. We have a very intensive and comprehensive COI. You can touch every single feature and every single sub feature with the COI. We also have a very nice web GUI, and every single feature is instrumented with an SNMP MIB. I'm not sure how many of you out there use some type of MIB application for managing your switch, but if you need to, you can do it with this switch. Now, you know what I mentioned so far are device managers. You can manage that individual device. You also need some type of network management solution, and we do have that, and we're very, very proud of it. It's a big part of what we have, a big part of how we differentiate ourselves. So our NMS is called cnMaestro, and cnMaestro can run out in the cloud, which is the big buzz nowadays, but it can also run on premise, either on your own VM or on some type of appliance, an appliance that we sell. So anyway, cnMaestro, very powerful NMS. Uplink ports. It may not seem like a big deal, but if you start comparing it to other switches, we do stand out. Our uplink ports, like on the 24 port switch, or the new switches I'm going to talk about, we have 4 10 gig uplink ports. So these are 4 fiber SFP plus ports. If you look at some of the competitors, they also have 4 SFP plus ports. If you look at a lot of competitors will have 2 ports, and a surprising number of competitors will only have 1 gig, not 10 gig uplink port. So something to take a look at. PoE is a real big one for us. It's big for enterprise spaces. I've been doing PoE for 20 years now. It's even bigger for the WISP space. Very, very important. A lot of different aspects of PoE. Anyway, so we have a very healthy power budget per switch. That power budget is shared across all the ports on that switch. If one port isn't using very much, you can use that power for other ports. We have complete control. We can disable, enable, monitor, prioritize these ports. And we can automate some of these aspects, like when should a port be set to low, high, or critical as far as the PoE priority, which is settable. Stats for the ports are available, how much power is being pulled at any given point in time. So a lot of energy into PoE. Advanced features. So policy-based automation, if you let me go loose, I will talk all day about this one feature. This is a big feature for us. I'm not talking about it today, but a quick little snapshot. These are user-created policies that automate the configuration needed when you plug in different types of devices or users. So you write a policy for a video surveillance camera, and you define what you want to happen. Put that video surveillance camera on a few VLANs, set some QoS settings, set some security settings, and then whenever that video camera is plugged into the switch, any port of any switch in your network, and boom, that switch will be automatically configured with the correct VLANs and so on and so forth. I'm more than happy to give a one-on-one session on this feature, give you a live demo, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's policy-based automation. And again, some advanced features are layer 3 support. There's switches out there that are layer 2 only, and that's okay for the edge. We do support layer 3 on our cnMatrix switches. There's switches out there that support layer 3, but it's static routes only. We support static and dynamic routing. We support RIP and OSPF. Okay, so a zero-touch experience. Zero-touch experience really relies on the PBA feature I mentioned to you a little while ago, but zero-touch has a different meaning to different people, but I'll tell you that what cnMatrix can deliver is when you initially deploy your switches, there's some type of initial configuration you want on those switches. Totally automated. All you do is plug the switch in the network and walk away. Now that's half of what you want to automate. What about your day-to-day operations? You walk up to a switch and you plug in a Wi-Fi access point. There's a decent amount of configuration needed on the switch for that. Well, if you write a PBA policy for that, you can totally automate that as well. So your day-to-day operations of adding devices, removing devices, or moving devices from one port to another port is completely automated with this PBA, delivering a true zero-touch experience. So this is a big one for us. Let's see, moving on. So all of these features that I've mentioned, it's very typical out in the industry for these features to require some type of licensing. For our cnMaestro management, it's free, right? You buy the switch, the base price of the switch for cnMatrix, you get cnMaestro for free. That is not the case at other vendors. One more example on the uplink ports. I know of switches in the industry that have 10 gig SFP plus fiber uplink ports on their switch. However, they throttle it back to 1 gig. They only let you use 1 gig until you buy a license. That is not the case here. So every feature that I've talked about, every feature I'll ever talk about on these switches comes with the base price of the switch. You also get not your standard 1-year warranty. You get it's called a limited lifetime warranty. It works out to 5 years. So you get a 5-year warranty, and you get the Cambium support. Some of you know about Cambium support more than I do, but I've heard very, very positive things about that. So anyway, you add it all up, and it really does give you best-in-class total cost of ownership. So big win. Next slide. All right, so simplifying operations with cnMatrix PBA. So remember these 3 things. Using a cnMatrix switch gives you a very secure environment. It makes it really easy to use, easy to deploy, easy to maintain, and easy to troubleshoot. And then the third one is TCO, total cost of ownership, which includes a lot more than just the price of the switch, the maintenance, the operations, so on and so forth. So from a security point of view, we have this PBA feature, which is a big part of everything we do. But anyway, we can automatically profile the devices that are connected to the device. We can automatically segment those devices into the desired subnet or VLAN so that they don't have access to what they're not supposed to have access to. We automatically enforce these policies across all the ports of the switch. And if you have multiple switches in your network, it's enforced across all ports in your entire network across every switch. A big part of this is, you have some high-end device plugged into a port that has high privileges and has access to some sensitive networks, sensitive VLANs. Well, when you remove the device from that port, you don't want to leave that the access to those VLANs open. You can plug in some other device, maybe with malicious intent. So anyway, when you remove that device, we will automatically remove the configuration of that port back to its static state. Okay, easy. So I kind of touched on this before, but zero touch initial deployment, zero touch for device adds, moves, and changes, and all ports are created equal. A port is a port is a port. So when you plug in an access point into port 7, you don't have to plug it into port 7. You can plug it into port 9, the port right next to it, or port 5, or port 13, and you can plug in as many access points as you want into any port you want. There's no restrictions. There is this one story that I like to tell. It actually happens. It sounds funny, but it actually happens. So, you're walking through the wiring closet and you have an access point that's plugged into port 7, let's say, and you accidentally kick out the cable. So you bend over, you pick up the cable, you turn around, you make sure no one's watching, and you plug it back in, and you walk away. Well, by accident, you didn't plug it back into port 7. You plugged it back into the port next to it. You plugged it into port 9. Well, port 9 is a PoE port. It's going to power up that access point. The access point will start advertising its SSIDs. Wireless users will attach to that access point. But because port 9 is not configured correctly, though that traffic's not going to flow anywhere. So you will have all those wireless users calling up the IT team complaining. And this is a common mistake. So anyway, with PBA, you don't have to worry about that. If you unplug it from port 7, PBA automatically will clean up the config on port 7. When you plug it back into port 9, PBA automatically detects it. It detects the device. It detects the device is a access point. It does have a policy for access points, so it applies the config to port 9, and you're good to go. So a port is a port is a port. Okay, next block here, total cost of ownership. So all this automation, all this zero touch, it eliminates the error-prone and time-consuming manual configuration. So this is probably the biggest bullet here, most important. So you no longer have to type in those 10 to 15 CLI commands per device. No chance for human error. There's a statistics out there, which I think it's too high, but anyway, they say it's 80%. 80% of all network failures are due to misconfiguration or some type of human error. So anyway, this goes a long way in reducing that. A big win for you. So when it is time to deploy devices and plug devices into the switch, you no longer need a trained IT staff to log into the switch and manually configure what's needed. No chances for a mistake. So the IT team absolutely is still needed, but they're plenty busy doing other things. But you no longer need them for this. You no longer need them for adds, moves, and changes. And just overall, kind of as a summary, reduces time, the energy, and costs required for network management. Okay, next slide. So introducing cnMatrix 3.0. So 3.0 is a big release for us. We've had software releases coming out in the past. Our most recent release is in December. It's a 2.1.2 release. It's a nice maintenance software release. So if you're not using it, I'd recommend upgrading to that software release. But here in March, we're coming out with our 3.0 release, which includes new hardware platforms, 4 new switches, and I will talk about them in detail later. We also happen to have a lot of new accessories that we're making a part of this release, and so I'll review those as well. Now, in this 3.0 release, it's not just new hardware. We have lots of new software features. One really big feature related to cnMaestro that I will go into detail with you guys. And this is all available March 20th. The new hardware is actually going into production as we speak. I think it's been delayed by a few days because of the coronavirus, but other than that, the hardware is looking really good. So production, the units should be sitting in our distribution centers in end of February or early March. These switches are available to order starting next week. So if you want one, you can at least place your order. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the new hardware. So this piece of hardware, well, let me do a quick review. So currently we're shipping 4 switches, 2 8-port switches and 2 24-port switches. The 2 8-port switches, one is PoE capable, one is not. The 2 24-port switches, one is PoE capable, one is not. So for this new model, this new switch platform, 48 ports, we don't have 2 models, we have 3. So one of the models is the non-PoE version. The second model is the PoE version. It has an internal power supply, so the amount of PoE power is fixed. It's 400 watts fixed, and that 400 watts can be shared in any way you want, or however the devices choose to pull power across all the 48 ports. Now, option 3 is kind of unique, and we're really excited about it. We've been getting some very positive feedback on this. Option 3 uses a removable power supply. So it does not have an internal fixed power supply. It relies on this removable power supply that you slide it into the back of the switch. When I was gathering requirements for this switch, I would ask 10 people, so how much PoE power do you think you'll need? Well, I would get 10 completely different answers. So anyway, this is one advantage of having removable power supplies, is that we can provide a very flexible PoE solution. So if you look at the column on the right, with this CRPS unit, which stands for Common Removable Power Supply, we can support the smaller ones has 500 watts of PoE. The next one up is 840 watts of PoE, and then the next one above that is 1,000 watts of PoE power. That's PoE. That's the amount of power that's dedicated to PoE. The power supply is actually a little bigger than that, so that it can power up the system. Another interesting fact here is that we have AC powered supplies as well as DC powered supplies. In enterprise deployments, DC is not very common, but just kind of a sneak peek here, these DC power supplies will also be used for our upcoming tower switches. All of those switches have removable power supplies, every one. Okay. And then this picture in the upper right, that's what these removable power supplies look like. They just slide right into the back of the switch. I don't have a picture of the back here, but it's a really clever design. We do it in such a way that we don't make the switch too deep. So it's still a relatively narrow switch. We have one more new switch. So the previous slide advertised 3 new switches. And this switch here, this is our 4th switch, 404. This is our multi-gig switch. It's called the EX2016M-P. So the M means it's multi-gig, and the -P means it's a PoE switch. So what is the big deal about this switch? Well, this switch supports 802.3BZ. This is the standard that was created when all the hype came up about the new access points needing more than 1 gig of bandwidth. So when 802.11 AC Wave 2 came out, in theory, they could pull more than a gig. But it was kind of only in theory, not very much in practice. But now we have a new Wi-Fi access point standard, 802.11ax, or you'll hear people talking about it as Wi-Fi 6. So For these new access points, we need new switches that can support more than a gig of bandwidth. This standard supports 2.5 or 5 gig, and the key to the standard is it does it over the existing wiring. If you had to rewire your whole building, that would cost way more than the cost of the switches or the APs or anything. So it's kind of nice. You just replace your APs with the new wave of APs, you place your switches, and boom, you now have more performance in your network. Now, for the switch that we are actually building, we're building a hybrid switch. It's a hybrid of normal 1 gig ports and the new 802.3BZ capable ports. And the reason for that is these 2.5 gig capable ports are expensive, and you don't need everything at 2.5 gig. You know, the port that you plug your printer into, you don't need 2.5 gig. Or the port that gets wired out to someone's cube, you don't need 2.5 gig to hook up a PC. So anyway, so we have 8 on this switch. We have 8 standard 1 gig 1 gig connectivity, and then we have this in the middle of the picture here. These green ports that signifies 6 ports that are 2.5 gig capable. Now we did something a little different with PoE on this switch also. On the 8 1 gig ports, those support the standard 802.3 AFAT, so we can support up to 30 watts per port. But on these green ports, we're using the new BT standard, which supplies PoE over 4 pair. So 4 pair PoE, and we can support up to 60 watts per port. And it really goes hand in hand with these 802.3BZ ports. You know, if you're going to plug in one of these high-end access points, 11AX access points, you know, some of those access points do need more than 30 watts. So anyway, so the great ports to deploy your 11AX access points. You know, the third bullet here just simply states, you know, Cambium, we are building access points, cnPilot access points, doing very, very well in this industry. And the next access points that we have coming out right around the same time frame as this switch is our 802.11ax capable cnPilot access point. So with that access point and this switch, it's a very, very nice bundle. And I almost forgot, on this switch, we also have SFP plus uplink ports. We have two 10 gig uplink ports on this box. Okay, next slide. I think, there we go. All right, let me talk about some of the accessories that are coming. The first accessory is not really related to these switches, but it's something that our customers have been asking us for a very long time. So they buy a switch from us. They want to also buy the transceivers or the SFP modules from us also. And what we've been telling all of our customers is, please buy your SFP modules from a vendor that you trust. There's different vendors out there that and they come with different reliability and different cost points. But anyway, we now carry our own transceivers. We have 6. We have 1 gig and 10 gig options, obviously with long reach or short reach capabilities. 4 of the 6 are fiber, and then 2 of them are for copper. So we have a 1 gig copper SFP and a 10 gig copper SFP. I'm not expecting to sell a lot of those, but we carry them. So anyway, so that's what we have. Okay, another accessory that's very important for us is these removable power supplies that I mentioned. So I listed the switch here, the EX2052R. The R stands for removable. -P means it's a PoE switch. So this switch, this is the only switch out of the 4 new switches we have. It's actually the only switch out of all 8 switches that we will currently have that needs a removable power supply. Now we have 6 options to choose from. And I already reviewed this on the previous slide, but real quick, we have 3 AC versions, 3 DC versions. The DC versions are isolated. They take negative or positive polarity, 48. The total PoE power budget is anywhere from 500 up to 1,000. Now, if you buy the PoE unit that has a fixed internal supply, you get 400 watts, which is good enough for a lot of applications. Let's see what else. Oh, one important thing. So you buy a switch. Our 4 switches that you buy, unlike the current 4 switches, these 4 new switches do not come with a power cord. And this removable power supply also does not come with a power cord. So you will need to buy your own power cord as an accessory, and Cambium does have those as well. Let's see. Okay, here's a kind of a wrap-up slide. These are our 8 new switches. The 4 switches on the top are the existing 8-port and 24-port switches. And I apologize, when I say 8-port, I'm talking about 8 access ports. We also have the 2 fiber uplink ports. So our 8-port switches are actually 10-port switches. The 24-port switches are actually 28-port switches if you include the fiber uplink. And our 48-port switches are actually 52-port switches because they also have 4 10-gig fiber SFP plus uplinks. So the picture of the transceivers down here in the corner, I didn't have a picture ready to go, so I took that picture with my iPhone. I think you can tell. But anyway, those are 3 of the 6 that we're going to carry. They do have the logo, the Cambium logo branded on them. All right, so I covered the new hardware. Let me talk about the new software, and then that will wrap it up for today. So the new software, we have a handful of new features, and I'm not going to go through all of them with you, but the one big feature, this one is a big one. This has to do with cnMaestro. So when you use cnMaestro with cnMatrix today, you get what you expect. It goes through the onboarding and registration process. It will auto download a config file if you want it to. It will auto download the software version that you desire, so it will automatically do that. You can use it for monitoring the switches, ports, and stats and capabilities. You can configure it, and you can use the cnMaestro troubleshooting tools to troubleshoot it. So all that is supported today. So you might ask, well, what else do you need to do that's so big? Well, it's about the configuration. Today, when you configure cnMatrix with cnMaestro, the configuration mechanism used is a config file or template-based mechanism. And a lot of customers love it. A lot of customers won't change. But a lot of customers are wanting to use more of a GUI interface instead of a config file interface. So that's the big change, is we've created a GUI interface. But anyway, let me walk through some of the bullets on this slide. So the biggest change that we've made right now is introducing a new view within cnMaestro. It used to be called Wireless LAN, and it was focused on cnPilot. We've renamed that to Enterprise View. This Enterprise View is will now manage both cnPilot and cnMatrix together. So it provides a user-friendly cloud-based interface. It significantly improves ease of use by providing automatic error checking when you enter something that's not a valid entry for that field for that configuration attribute. It will tell you. One example here is it greatly simplifies VLAN configuration if you compare that to what you need to do on like a command line interface. So this greatly simplifies cnMatrix configuration and monitoring by using this new GUI-based cnMaestro approach. This makes it really easy to deploy the Cambium wired and wireless together, so managing both cnPilot and cnMatrix. You know, having an end-to-end solution from the same vendor, all the way from your edge switches through your distribution up to the core, is nice. It's a nice to have. The returns diminish though the farther back in the network you go. What you really want from a single vendor is to control the access layer of the network. So the wired and wireless connectivity at the edge of your network, it is nice to have that with the same vendor. For us, you know, if you plug our access points into a non-vendor switch, a non-Cambium switch, it's going to work fine. You get 1 + 1 = 2. But if you plug a Cambium wireless device into a Cambium switch, it enables us to add some extra bells and whistles because control both sides of that equation. So Cambium wireless plus Cambium wired, 1 + 1 = 3. So anyway, with cnMaestro as the cloud-based management, makes it a nice trio, really makes it nice for managing that edge, the wired and wireless connectivity. Okay, one other addition that you get with this upgraded cnMaestro is that it supports auto sync. So the configuration that you've configured on your cnMaestro interface, it ensures that that configuration is in sync with the switches. Let's say a switch goes offline for a day. So you have 10 switches, one goes offline. You do a bunch of configuration on cnMaestro while the switch is offline. So all 9 of 10 switches are configured and up to date. As soon as that 10th switch, I mean, maybe you took it out of the network for maintenance or something. As soon as you plug it back into the switch, boom, it gets brought up to the same level of configuration that the other 9 switches has. So this auto sync mode is quite nice. All right, so what else? So with cnMaestro, you also get, with this new GUI interface, you also get virtual stacking. This is a very big win for us. So a group of switches that are logically formed into a virtually stacked. You can manage your group of switches as one logical switch. So you can do this any way you want. All the switches on one floor of your building could be a group of switches. Or all the switches in that building completely could be one group of switches or a virtual stack. Or just that single wiring closet. However many switches you have in that wiring closet, that could be viewed as a virtual stack. Anyway, on these virtual stacks, you can view all the events, the switch events, all the notifications, and all the stats in one convenient dashboard that represents all the switches, not just one of the switches. There's a common configuration that you use across all switches. So, and you can do overrides as well. You can have 9 out of 10 configured one way, and that 10th switch, you can modify a portion of the configuration. So very, very powerful virtual stacking. Now what comes with that are switch ports. So the ports of the switches that are part of these virtual stacks are also identified as being a part of that virtual stack. So all the ports across all the units in your stack. So if you have, 10 of our 24 port switches, you're gonna have 240 access ports, and you'll have 40 fiber uplink ports. So that's a lot of ports to view, right? What is the total there? 240 plus 40, 280 ports. So you have 280 ports, and if you're looking at the port screen in cnMaestro, I mean, how are you going to remember where you plugged in that new printer, or how are you going to remember where you plugged in that video surveillance camera, so on and so forth? Well, there's very nice tools in cnMaestro to filter down that list. You can look at only the ports that are operationally enabled. You can look at only the ports that have PoE power. You can look at only the fiber ports versus the copper ports, or you can tag ports and make a group out of those tags, right? So you can tag the ports that you're most interested in, and then you can view only those tagged ports. So instead of having a screen that scrolls off and off with 280 ports, you could filter it down to 5 ports or 10 ports or whatever, and view only those 10 ports. Now, there is a description field or an auto labeling field for ports, for interfaces. All switches support this description field that you manually enter. Using that field can be very helpful in viewing these port tables as well. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. Okay, I finished talking about cnMaestro and the benefits of our cnMaestro enhancements in 3.0. Now I'm going to talk about some other miscellaneous features that we added to 3.0 as well. I just have one slide here on that. So ability to download new images to your switch. Up until now, we've supported TFTP. And now we support, you could put your image on a USB stick, plug it in the box, and you can download it from there if you want. But what I'm advertising here is the ability to download new images via HTTP or HTTPS. It's very secure, and it's very convenient and faster. But this came from a customer request. Customer wanted to be able to do this, and we added it in. And my entire team only uses this mechanism for downloading images. It's very nice, very convenient. You'll notice that we have a big theme that we put a lot of energy into is ease of use. So we want to make it really easy for our customers to deploy these switches, to use these switches, to configure these switches, to maintain the switches, and to troubleshoot the switches. So everything I'm talking about kind of falls into that category in most cases. Okay, auto port labeling. This one is one of my pet favorites here. So every switch out there, almost every vendor out there has a way to describe each interface or each port, and you manually enter a string for that port. So let's say you have a printer plugged into port 3. On the port 3 port description, you enter printer, or you type in whatever you want, and you're good to go. Now, if you move that printer from port 3 to port 4, you also have to go back in there and remove that label, that description, and then re-enter it into the new port. That's how it's done in every switch that I'm aware of. So we've done something different here. And this is a feature you can enable or disable. We have it enabled by default. Based on LDP, LDP is a packet that's sent back and forth between end devices and the switch. We look at all the little data snippets that are included in the LDP, and this is configurable by the user, but we'll grab one of those fields and use that as the label for that port. Now, we also support static and manual configuration as well. But this is automatic, so it automatically applies the label. When the device goes away, it automatically removes it. We have the same feature available in our PVA as well, which is very nice. Okay, ease of improvements. Ease of use improvements. So improved interface mode command. I'm not going to go through these in details. Ability to configure ranges of VLANs. This one's very nice. So if you want 5 VLANs in your network, big deal. But if you want 500 VLANs in your network, you don't want to have to create them one by one or add ports to them one by one. You can create multiple VLANs, and you can assign one port or multiple ports to either one VLAN or multiple VLANs. So it's a very nice feature improvement. Again, customers were asking for this, and we put it into this 3.0 release. Also for troubleshooting, if troubleshooting is ever needed, we've added some bells and whistles to help us out there. Now PBA, our single biggest feature, getting a lot of traction with PBA. We're always constantly fine-tuning it and adding enhancements to it. We've improved our MAC-based rules. We now support identifying devices based on MAC addresses, so MAC ranges, MAC OIDs, OUIs, and so on. So anyway, there's other issues with MAC-based. You might see MACs coming in on multiple ports, multiple MACs. How do you know which ones to choose? Anyway, these are enhancements to handle all those issues. We also can now support dynamic policy execution as well. When I do a deeper dive on PBA, I can go into more details on that stuff. Okay, I think we're going to summarize things a little bit. So, not just for our 3.0 release, but just in general for cnMatrix. All these switches, we have 8 of them now, enterprise grade, layer 2, layer 3 functionality, cloud management with cnMaestro, ease of use, so zero touch provisioning for initial deployment of your switches, also zero touch provisioning using PVA to automate the adds, moves, and removal of devices in your network. Enhanced security, this is a big one. You know, automatically detecting that device that plugs into your network and automatically segmenting it into the correct VLAN. Complete access layer controls. So, you know, this is quite a nice little bundle here. You got the switches giving you your wired access. You have cnPilot giving you your wireless access, and then now cnMaestro giving you your network management solution that can run either on-premise or in the cloud. So very, very nice bundle, this trio here. And again, overall, if you add in the limited lifetime warranty, the best-in-class support, you really do have switches here that can compete with anyone out there. Best-in-class TCO for sure. And that wraps it up for me. Q&A. Olivia, did you want me to hand this back over to you, or I can just do it here?
You can answer the questions that are in the question box. It looks like we already have a few that have come in.
Okay, great. Okay, I just figured out how to pop up the box here. So
Okay.
yes, okay, thanks Olivia. About SFP, when the Cambium will be compliant at the MSA compatibility, I'm going to have to get back to you on this one. I do not know the answer to this. I'm sorry, Paulo. And Mike, thanks for chiming in here. Yeah, I talked a little bit about PBA today. I have done some videos on them, and they are up on YouTube. So feel free to watch those for sure. And if you have a team of guys that you want to get together and just do a one-on-one call about PBA or about any other topic, feel free to reach out to Olivia or to me, and we can set that up. Okay, next question by Emra. Will there be Q&Q support, adding S tags, C tags, replacing the tags, etc.? Q&Q is not in our switch today, but Q&Q is a common ask. We do have it on our roadmap. So will there be Q&Q? Yes, the answer is yes, eventually. I don't have a date for you, but it's on our list. Okay, what is PBA? Great, Dave. Let's set up a private call, and I'll go into more detail than you want. I'll give you a short answer here, though. PBA, policy-based automations. These are user policies that are created by you that have two components. The first component is the match component. When you plug a device into a port, how do you know that's the device that matches that policy? Well, you can use any of the data in the LDP packet to match. You can use MAC addresses, MAC address range, an exact MAC address, MAC UI, anything like that to match the device. The second component of these policies is what actions do you want to take? Well, actions, most common one is VLANs. It will create the VLAN if it doesn't exist. It will make that port a member of that VLAN. The uplink port of that switch will also be made a member of that VLAN. The egress tagging rules, which is very important for VLANs, will also get set. The native VLAN or PVID will also be set. So that's VLANs. There's QoS settings, there's security settings, there's PoE priority settings. So let's say you want your video surveillance cameras to be critical, you want your IP phones to be high, and you want everything else to be low. Things like that. So you can auto set the PoE priority. You can auto label ports. If it matches this policy, you might want to label it as, a concatenation of the word video camera with the MAC address or something like that. So anyway, there's a quick overview of PBA for you, and I'm more than happy to go do a deeper dive for you. Also, you can access the YouTube videos as well. 802.3 AZ green Ethernet. Yes. I actually don't have an exact answer for you. I'm almost positive we do support this, but I need to double check on this. So let me get back to you on this, or somehow get back to you. Yeah, what you put here is pretty accurate. I do think we need to enable some software to enable that capability. Okay, moving on to Claudia. They have planned to offer a switch to be mounted on the tower. That is correct. Just real quick, our high-level view, long-term view, is we're going to build 3 switching families. The enterprise switching family is what I talked about today. We're well on our way. We have eight models now. We also are, the second family of switches is going to be for towers or for WISP deployments. Our third family of switches is going to be for pole mountable environments. These are for outdoor video surveillance capabilities. We'll use Cambium subscriber module to provide connectivity to that pole. And then our switch will tap into the power of the pole, provide PoE out and connectivity for that SM for a couple access, outdoor access point, maybe a couple video surveillance cameras. Is there support for Ansible to configure the switches? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the question. Oh yeah, do you have a time frame for the hardened outdoor switch? Any initial specs? We're getting close on that. We don't have any specs that are ready to hand out. I can tell you we got our very first protos back, and they're looking really nice. So yeah, we're looking at towards the end of this year, second half of this year for those switches. Next question is, or will a new cnMatrix data sheet be available that includes all the software and hardware updates that have taken place since March? Yes, we do have a new data sheet, and you're days away from seeing it. We are going to post it probably on February 17th. So we do have a new data sheet. It's similar to our existing data sheet. Of course, we've added more information for the 4 new switches. Is there support for Ansible to configure the switches? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Olivia, can we save this list of questions and who asked them?
Yes, I can save the list of questions with the names of people who asked them.
Great. Thanks, Olivia. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When will cnMaestro be available to fully configure cnMatrix 3.0? Okay, good question. So what I've been talking about today, the big cnMaestro piece, comes with the enterprise view, which gives you the really nice GUI. It gives you virtual stacking. So all that I talked about today comes in version 2.3.1, and 2.3.1 is lined up with 3.0. 2.3.1 and 3.0 are both available for beta. To get onto the cnMaestro beta server, you have to fill out an application or whatever, but that's available. Mid-March is when both 3.0 and 2.3.1 are available for prime time. They'll both be, the servers will be up and running in 2.3.1, as well as the cnMatrix 3.0 image will be available for downloading as well. Let's see how to say this. So if you migrate to the new cnMaestro 2.3.1, you can still manage cnMatrix switches that aren't running 3.0 yet, but you won't get all the neat new features. To get all the features that I talked about today, you have to also be running cnMatrix 3.0. Okay, moving on. How many switches can you put in a cluster? I was just wondering this myself. I'm going to have to get back to you. It's hundreds. It's not 4 or 6 or 8. It's a very, very large number. I'll have to get back to you on this. So when you say cluster, you're talking about our virtual stack. So we can create a virtual stack or a group of switches of how many switches. So let me get back to you on that answer. Hello, I like layer 3 features, but with small customers that is not needed. So I'm waiting for a cheaper layer 2 switch portfolio. Yeah, that's fair. If you compare our switch with layer 2 plus type of switches, you'll find it's very competitively priced. These lower end layer 2 switches, sometimes will come with 1-year warranty. They won't have all these features, but if you don't need those features, that's what you're saying. So I would talk to your Cambium sales rep and see what kind of pricing you can get and see if it really is more than these cheaper layer 2 switches. And B, think about the future, right? So when you buy this Cambium switch, it's really a future proof for you. You may not need PUE, but you'll have it if you ever do. You may not need the layer 3, but you have it if you ever do. You may not need the 10 gig uplinks yet, but you have it if you ever do. The switches that I've been selling here and at my previous company, been doing switches for 20 years, there's customers that write letters after 10 years and they just plugged it in, they use it, and they haven't changed. So anyway, so it really does give you a very long life. These switches were built to last, and that's why we're offering the 5-year warranty. So anyway, but if you still want to save a little bit on a per switch basis, the real question you're asking me, are we coming out with a new series of switches? I have a really good slide on this, but anyway, this edge space or this access layer space is an $8 million space just for edge switching. So that $8 million is divided up into, I like to look at it as 3 segments. You kind of low end, mid range, and high end. And I want to satisfy that. we are tackling the sweet spot, which is the mid-range, which is our EX2K family of products, the products I shared with you today. But in the long term, I imagine coming out with an EX3K family for the higher end solutions. And then also, I imagine coming out with an EX1K family, which answers your question here. So our 1K family would be a layer 2 plus at a lower cost, and that's probably what you're looking for. And nothing's been announced yet, but we are looking at it. Let me just tell you that. Okay, next question. Layer 7 reporting feature in the next release. I do not know. I apologize. Let's get back to you on that. Probably not the next release. Here's another question about a green Ethernet. Again, I'll have to get back to you on that. From which firmware? The firmware running on the switch should be any firmware, and you can download from cnMaestro to that switch. Like for example, when the 2.3.1 cnMaestro comes out, you will be able to download 3.0 automatically with that combination. Hopefully I answered your question. PTP support, no, not at this time. Next question. It would be nice to have 24-port fanless switch for next hardware. Yeah, okay, so you know our existing 24-port PoE switch, I'm assuming you're talking about our PoE switch. Our existing 24-port PoE switch has a fan and 2 fans, and they're being used. However, we want to put in a mode where you can put it in low PoE mode, and that means we will cap, you know, we have 400 watts of PoE on that 24-port switch. We will cap it to a much lower amount. So if you don't need that much PoE, we can keep the fans off. If you need more PoE, then the fans have to be. Oh, yep, okay. What about physical stacking? Is it planned or no? So my previous company, I did stacking for 15 years, and I worked for Nortel Networks and then Avaya, and we had really good stacking. I think we had really good stacking, and that was true physical stacking. And I absolutely understand the difference between physical stacking and virtual stacking. I think virtual stacking gives you only the management of your group of switches. It does not give you the full data plane. For example, you cannot create a link aggregation or a port channel using ports from multiple switches. You cannot do that with virtual stacking. But solving the management piece of it does get you kind of most of the way there. This is what most customers are looking for, the ability to manage multiple switches with as if they were one. But true physical stacking is not on our immediate roadmap. I probably get notes about it and talk about it every other day, but it's not yet on our roadmap. Perpetual PoE Plus is a nice feature to have. You restart the switch and the device attached to that port is still switched on. Yeah, that is an interesting feature request. I like it. I can't say yes or no if we're doing that or not, but I'm going to add it to our list. It's a cool feature. I repeat, when will be possible update firmware via CM? Updating firmware on the switch works today with the cnMaestro and the switches shipping today. You can download firmware from the switch today. If you're talking specifically about 3.0, you have to wait for the new cnMaestro 2.3.1 to download 3.0. I'm sorry, Paolo, it sounds like I'm not answering your question, but I typed in another question if I didn't answer it. But even with what's shipping today, you can download software from cnMaestro to cnMatrix. Oh, just lost him. Okay. Thank you, Joel. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. And yes, I like this last comment, Christian. Yes, you only need a firewall for a complete end-to-end solution. Yeah, we're talking about it. No, I can tell you there's no serious plans yet. But yes, we are talking about it. Okay, I think I made it to the end of the questions. Olivia, how should we wrap things up? I want to say thank you very, very much for everyone and all your time and all these great questions. I'm, as part of this launch of 3.0, I'm happy to get on a call anytime with your own team. We can dive into the specific topics that you may have questions on. So you can reach out to me directly, or you can reach out to Olivia, and Olivia will let me know.
Okay, thanks, John. We'll get a recording of today's webinar on the Cambium YouTube channel and our online community. Thank you for joining and have a good day.